Public outrage boiled over this weekend surrounding a judge's decision to release a suspect charge in relation to the murder of 10-year-old Victoria Martins. Judge Charles Brown ruled there wasn't enough evidence to prove Fabian Gonzalez was a flight risk or an ongoing threat to the community. Now, roughly 100 people protested in front of the courthouse on Sunday, even calling for the judge's dismissal and surge. The frustration is totally understandable here, but court officials say the judge is just following the letter of the law passed by voters in 2016 that increases the standards for keeping a suspect behind bars pre-trial. Do you agree?
Do I agree with
the idea that the judge was correct here? Sorry, my fault. That he was just following the letter of the law and he was correct here, and there was just no wiggle room.
Absolutely. I can't weigh in on the merits of that decision, but This is the way the system is supposed to work.
Okay.
This moment was always going to come where a high-profile case with an exceedingly unpopular defendant was put through the process that we voted into our Constitution a few years ago, right? And the policy behind it does not change. The idea is we think that we should default towards keeping people out of jail while they're awaiting trial because the costs are very high. We presume people to be innocent. We have seen that people lose their homes, they lose their jobs, their whole lives falls apart. We've seen that the longer someone is incarcerated pre-trial, the more likely they are to get a longer sentence, to re-offend if they're released, to have other negative outcomes, right? So we said, let's take a look at that and have decided that we want to lean away from keeping people in jail. And it's not a question of is this popular, and is this something that's going to incite outrage. We've talked about this on the show before, that you're going to see outrage and people get upset when they think that someone was released who should not have been. You never are going to see or hear about the times when someone should have been released but was kept in custody and caused all of the ripple effect and the downstream effects. And so it's always going to skew this way, and it's way early in the game to decide whether this is a good or a bad thing, generally or in this specific case. But I think this played out exactly the way it should have done, and the way that we've intended it to. We want it to be a default to someone not staying in jail.
And if you want to talk about the specifics of this case and what brought us to this point, APD and the district attorney totally botched this case. And this guy was locked up for 3 years. You got protesters lined up outside the court. Why aren't they lined up outside the district attorney's office and outside APD? Judge Brown knows way more facts about this than we do, reading the paper. But all he can do is take the case as it stands now. And, what's happening in detention hearing after detention hearing, as Serge points out, plenty of people are remaining locked up who shouldn't be, and here's why. APD is stacking these search warrants. They're just jamming every bad fact in, preparing for a detention hearing. That's what the judge has to read. The judges are locking people up based upon those bad facts. Defense attorneys have very little work with at these very early stages because you want to decide on detention right away. And people are getting locked up. So now here we have a case where we've got the benefit of 3 years. We can see how botched the investigation was. We can see that the case is not what it was when it was presented, prior. And you got a judge doing the right thing. So call Raul and call up APD and say, why are you screwing these cases up? This is high profile. You got to do this right. It ain't the judge's fault.
Interesting point there, Sophie, because the judge thing is a lightning rod thing. We've all but a lot of folks have sort of fallen into that trap. Is this the kind of case that will turn around and have folks do exactly what Justine's mentioning here? Take a look at the situation. The guy wasn't even in the room when the murder took place. He wasn't even there, for gosh sake.
These aren't necessarily conversations that we're seeing when protesters show up. They have a heartfelt conviction, no pun intended, that something needs to be done. And that's, I think, one of the most interesting things about the interviews with folks who are at the protest involving this release is that you hear a lot of something needs to be done, someone needs to be held accountable, et cetera. And I think it shows sort of how opaque our legal system is to most people, that they're saying, well, right now, today, the judge is the villain, and not recognizing that there are well-defined concrete steps that lead to the judge really having to follow the law. And so when we say the law is the problem, I'm not sure that that's true. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's not true. I think that we have many more steps that we need to be tracking before that. And frankly, one of them, although I don't think this is a get out of jail free, terrible puns, is that we have underfunded our judicial system. We've underfunded our public defenders. We've underfunded our prosecutors to such an extent that all they're kind of left with is, it's your fault, no, it's your fault, because they're not, I'm going to Justine's point, we're not necessarily seeing the job being done here before it gets to the judge.
Interesting points there. You know, Crystal, when you think about it, Raul Torres was mentioned, and so he's calling for some reforms. Bill Ream's calling for reform up in our legislature. Is there a middle ground here somewhere? Can we honestly get to a point where, unless a defendant can prove he's not going to be a problem, a judge can say, no, actually, you're going to stay here as a violent criminal until you have your day in court? Can we actually get to a middle ground on that?
I don't
That's
know.
tricky.
Like it's absolutely tricky, and especially since policy and legislation came into the unfortunate disadvantage to what the courts and crime and safety in our community has been. Like it's the technicalities, it's the devil in the details that has caused us to where we're at right now.
Right.
But I mean, I very much applaud everybody that is involved in crime and safety to make sure that they're writing better policies so they can actually make our community safer. That we have to think about that. But moving to that aside, in terms of the gentleman who why am I forgetting his name? Gonzalez.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah. The fact that he was released from jail, et cetera, like now we have to think back of not only did the case get so botched with the investigation and him being released from jail.
It hasn't been released yet, right?
Because he's looking for home.
There's nowhere to go.
So now we have to think about
Right.
not only is it an issue for his public safety, like him as an individual, like not only getting fights in jail, et cetera, but now he's got a reputation that he's got to clean up, especially with like the bail and the drama behind, his cousin and his ex-girlfriend, et cetera. The part that really scares me, though, that I know that no law can, I get it. The letter of the law is the letter of the law. There's no doubt about that. Is when they say that, he has a charge of he's about to be tried for a charge of child abuse resulting in death. I don't see how he is not enough to be a danger in society.
Gotcha.
Right? And I know the lawyers in the room are like, Crystal, you don't understand it. And that's fine, but it's very much the point that comes down to, is there enough information for the public to genuinely understand why this person should have been let go? Is it do we really need better bail reforms and policies out there? Absolutely. It's a big mess. That's the best way I can put it.
Mr. Gonzalez has some previous stuff about failure to appear. He's not, he's got some checky history, or whatever you want to call it. Is that good enough in your view? 3 years is a long time. Is a year and a half good enough?
Yeah, these are nuanced decisions, and these judges are doing the best they can. One problem in state court is you don't have an appeal. The judges really have to get it right. Our appellate courts are taking a very hands-off position on these cases. Unlike in federal court, you go before a federal magistrate, you get locked up, you can have an Article III judge review it. And so, I think we shouldn't Monday morning quarterback it. Judge Brown is extremely seasoned and experienced. He was a prosecutor for many years. He's got good horse sense. He sees defendants all day long, every day. These judges have massive dockets. They've got to make the best call they can with what's in front of them. And he's started a lot of argument on this case.
He's actually handled another case that was similar, where he was under some controversy because he had to let someone go under the letter of the law. So he's not a stranger to this, certainly. But I mentioned Bill Ream, and I want to stay with you on this a little bit. He wants to reattack the idea of bail reform in the legislature. Again, same question I asked Crystal. Is there a middle ground here for this legislation?
I don't think there's any interest group that's totally satisfied with where we are in bail reform. Right. It's hard. We started out with, if you're poor, you're going to be locked up. And everybody agreed that was a problem.
Right.
Because people were buying their way out. And so we needed to do something. Justice Daniels really spearheaded this change, and I think we're better off than we were because we're asking the right questions.
Right.
But it is evolving, and we're going to have to incrementally get to a point where we're giving the judges the tools to make the right decisions. But as part of that, it's not necessarily a legislative fix. You've got to have prosecutors who are bringing honest appraisals of the case to the court, and cops on board and defense attorneys on board. So I think it's better, but it's hard to make these calls, and sometimes you make mistakes.
and surgery. I have to finish where we started. The voters voted for this.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? They would not have it unless there were serious problems for a long time here about people being locked up for incredible amounts of time over nothing. Do you know what I mean? So same question for these last, is there a middle ground here you can see possibly coming here where judges have the tools they need to lock up the most violent offenders, but then not violate rights at the same time? Is that a possibility here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that judges don't have those tools now, right?
Okay.
There may be, there's always going to be hiccups as we start to implement these things. It's still a very new thing.
That's right.
And like I said, this was always going to happen. Okay, now let's figure out, what's the right response.
Good point there. Have to leave that there for now. Still to come this week on The Line, growing concerns about a shortage of firefighters in rural communities across New Mexico.